Okay, call to order meeting, council meeting, 7 o'clock. Pledge of allegiance, stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, roll call. All council members are present except for Councilor McHugh, who is online. And you are there, correct, Mr. McHugh?
Yes, I am.
I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll offer a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Councilor Holmes to approve the agenda. Seconded.
Mr. Mayor, I think we need to amend the agenda to pick up our conversation from the Urban Renewal Agency first.
I move to approve the agenda with the addition of.
You would probably put it after the public comment. My recollection is that the reason we were doing this is so that members of the public could know when they could testify.
Okay, so I move to approve the agenda this evening with the addition of the continuation of the Urban Renewal Agency following public comment.
Motion made by Councilor Greisen to accept the consent agenda with adding Urban Renewal District meeting following public comment. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Councilor Miller. Any discussion? All those in favor, state by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay, public comment. We're looking for public comment items that are not on the agenda. And please limit to 5 minutes. And if you do want to comment, we fill out a form with Reeves. And when you do come up, please state your name and city and give your comments. Any comments at this time? Online? Okay, we will close public comment. Now we will reopen Urban Renewal Agency meeting. Continue where we left off.
Sure. I envision the process is not that the EDC is coming up with some sort of, list of meets or doesn't meets, but that they look at every application, then give us a narrative about what they see could work for this or what it wouldn't. It's just a general commentary, not necessarily a checklist. And then we would take those comments and then we would use our own sort of criteria with their narrative and make our decision. So I don't think we're directing the EDC to come up with some sort of a checklist or look for specifically. They're going to look at it in their whole lens with their expert eyes, and they're going to come up with their opinion for every application. They'll bring those back to us. No application will be denied and not put before us because, EDC didn't think that's, so we'll see everything. And with what we see, we'll hear from you first. And then I think we dialogue and have a discussion. Then we make our choice holistically. I think we're agreeing to the process, so that's good.
Good. So then looking for a motion to approve the council goal recommendation from the EDC for them to review all grant applications and give a recommendation to the agency, Urban Renewal Agency. All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I move that we approve that the Economic Development Committee review the Urban Renewal Agency grant applications and provide us their input before we make our own decisions.
We have a motion made by Councilor Greisen for the EDC to review all grant applications and make a recommendation to the council or to the agency, the renewal agency. A second.
A second.
By Councilor LaFriend. Any discussion?
So we're not adopting the goals set here because here it says number 4 that EDC will recommend approval, modify approval, or deny the grant application, right? And is that my understanding is that we do that or they do that?
I believe they will vote in their group.
Okay.
They will approve it, recommend it, or deny it to us,
Right.
to the agency.
And then we will second.
Then we will look
Second
at it
approved it.
and then make our own decision.
Chair,
Yes?
may I? So all of the language that refers to a goal in this memo is really a goal that the Economic Development Committee set for their own body. And one of those was that they identified this need, which is why this process recommendation is before you today. So what you would really be adopting is much more of a process amendment than a council goal, which, gives funding to projects and things like that.
Yeah, so they're gonna vote to approve, modify approval, or deny grant application in their recommendations. Agency, Urban Renewal Agency, and the agency will take that in consideration. And
So just to clarify, will we see only the ones they approve?
No, you would still see everything. It's a recommendation only.
For example, on this last one, I think as the chair that I would think that our group would also ask for a specific amount. So we would give you that application. Hey, there's no specific amount, there's no specific item. So maybe we should ask for additional information. That would come to you and then you would make that decision. We're just giving you our recommendation, maybe expediting the process just a little bit for you.
Perfect, thank you.
Any more discussion? All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So then, can I then assume, are we able to let them look at the food pod cart
Mhm.
application and then bring that back to us, to the agency, not us, but to the agency, on your recommendation?
I have a question. So because it's blank, again, this is just arbitrary. Because it's blank, before waiting until April, could we then go to staff and say, hey, they're not asking for a specific amount. Can we have the application more complete before it goes to you? Just to expedite it for them since you all don't meet that often.
Are you able to bring them into your meetings and ask questions, or when you're, looking at grant applications, are you able to ask and bring up questions to them?
So we haven't had this process before. So presumably, yes, I would think that we could have them on an EDC agenda to come in and speak about the project. But what I had heard earlier was that you were going to consider potentially some sort of metrics by which you would evaluate these. So wouldn't you want that set up before it came back to you? Or I guess we need a little bit more clarification.
I personally would like to look at the agency information and see how it is written and determine if the new agency members think it is needs any tweaking or adjustments on maybe a prioritization. You're looking at new construction, old paints, even beautification, and just to maybe, I want to look at it before making changes. It might be fine.
I think we looked at it also just capping it. So, we get $25,000 a year and we just had some excess from previous years that hadn't been assigned yet, but we give $25,000 to one business per year, then not a lot of businesses would benefit. So is there a cap each application?
Pete, do you have a question?
There is a
Yeah, I'm not sure what's being expedited here. It seems like, at least from the person who's making the application, they're going to have to go through this twice. And I just have a little concern about that. And there's some advantages to not being real specific in what we're looking for, because there could be situations where we're real specific. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. That we're specific, but yet it's a good application. We might want to approve it. So in some respects, I like the fact that our guidelines are open. We can determine what is benefiting the city and what's not, just by using our own judgment. But I'm just a little concerned about making these applicants come in and do 2 presentations, and so it's not being expedited for them.
Counselor Holmes?
Yeah, so I mean, I think Peter kind of highlighted 3 purposes of this type of program, right? So it might be helpful to understand how that plays out in different communities, and maybe this is something that EDC can help educate us. You know, how has the goal of a tax base played out, and what do those criteria look like, right? What makes a successful application, and maybe bring that back to us, and then we can review that and say, okay, what do we want this program to do for our community? And then help shape that up. And certainly I understand the concern, Councillor McHugh. Hopefully we would be able to define the program in a way that they wouldn't require them to come before 2 bodies and plead their case twice. And I think some clarity might help prevent that.
Possibly you guys meet monthly. They might be able to meet you before they can get to agency, which might be 3-4 months out at sometimes.
And we're not limited to monthly. We can, like, if we had a bunch of applications, we could certainly get all of us together again for lunch and more sandwiches.
The other thing is that the EDC goes from noon to 1:30 and they don't have another meeting backing them up at 1:30. So, you know, they could ask these questions and sort of expedite it from the agency's point of view, where all of this stuff has already been discussed and is on record for you to consider.
Mayor?
Yes.
My recommendation would be that the EDC comes back with the full outline and recommendation of what you think council should adopt, and then we revisit that at the next council meeting.
Adopt in terms of what? Process, standards?
The parameters of the urban renewal program is what I understood, Tyler.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Understood.
At the next urban renewal agency meeting.
In April?
That was going, so as I was saying that, I was wondering, it has to be at.
It does have to be at a URA meeting. So it wouldn't, I was just going to clarify, it wouldn't be at the next council meeting. Just it wouldn't be ready in time. And there's going to be need some time to just do the research and put it together.
And the committee have discussion with any of the agency members at all in the in-between time to try to work out the specifics so that it goes a little smoother at the next actual meeting?
Well, I'll let Peter weigh in on that. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're a public body that's bound by public meeting and public records requirements. So it wouldn't be ideal to have you guys interfacing with the Economic Development Committee unless you're showing up in your individual capacity at their meeting, because their meeting's a public meeting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Andrew is our liaison and Mayor usually attends.
But we attend as councilmen, not agents.
Well, I guess my question is, that's still a public meeting, so it's still publicly noticed. So could the mayor and the liaison still have a conversation with them? I mean, it's still a publicly noticed meeting. It's open to the public.
Yeah.
So they can work out the tentative concept between each other, is what I'm asking, and then it can go in front of the entire agency at an actual agency meeting. Is that accurate?
I mean, they can share their opinion on what kind of parameters the program should have during that economic development meeting.
So we would come to your meeting and that would be on your agenda to discuss the parameters of the program.
Yes.
I'm just trying to figure out how to make this more efficient.
I think that, I mean, we have a meeting on Thursday, so if they're available, then we can add that to our bullets. Agenda hasn't been issued yet, but will be tomorrow, I believe.
Yeah.
Jay?
So this might be an opportunity for a joint work session. I know the calendar is quite full for that, but with Economic Development Committee, as many members that can make it on Monday at 6, and then the council to talk about this, the agency, excuse me.
At the next urban renewal agency, at a agency meeting.
Right. I mean, just to begin workshopping and get everyone in the same room at the same time, talking about, you know, the advantages and restrictions of having criteria and then what those might look like.
I think it would be important to make sure that all the agency members are having input on what that looks like at the same time.
It just, especially with 3 new agency members, be nice to on it. And I can be at the Thursday meeting most likely.
I'll be there. I just supposed to represent the council as a liaison.
You're just listening when you go.
Yeah, so how can I provide input?
Can ask you for input, but
But it would be my
You
input.
just can't vote.
you just can't vote. Yeah.
Yeah, your liaison would be there listening, but your agency person would be able to speak and ask questions and answer questions.
Mr. Mayor, I would just direct staff to find a time on the calendar in the near future that we can schedule a work session with EDC and the Urban Renewal Agency to discuss the vision of this program and work together to find some common ground.
April.
That's great.
We do
We do in April.
everything due diligence beforehand. We could try to make it quick and let's,
Thank you.
anything else? Thank you.
And then one more question. Do you want the EDC to take a look at the food cart pod application, or do you want to put that on pause until we figure out a process?
We can, yeah, let's wait.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, am I on council liaison assignments?
Are.
I believe this doesn't take a vote, but we did come up with our 2023 city liaison, council liaisons of council and committees. Columbia County, we have established kind of a new Columbia County liaison that will attend meetings and report back to council activities at Columbia County. The Columbia County Commissioner meetings. Councilor Tyler Miller. Columbia Economic Team, that is me, Joe Backus. Economic Development Committee is Councilor Andrew LaFrenz. Historical Society and Watts House, we're going to try me, Joe Backus, and Councilor Andrew LaFrenz. Parks Committee, Councilor Jeanette Santiago. Schools Council President Megan Greisen. Senior Center, Councilor Pete McHugh. And City Manager Alexander Rains has been attending those as well and will continue to. Traffic Safety Council President Megan Greisen and Councilor Pete McHugh. 50-year vision process as a liaison, Councilor Kim Holmes. And Councilor Jeanette Santiago is also on that committee. Then 911 Communications, Councilor Tyler Miller. Questions, comments, missing anything there? It does say approved by, so do we need to, all of us need to approve it at some time?
Yes, you would approve it tonight.
Motion to approve then the city council liaison assignments.
Motion to approve.
Motion, Councilor Santiago first, seconded
Second.
by Councilor Miller. Discussion, question?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would just like to hear from whomever's willing to review with us what it looks and sounds like to be a liaison as a city councilor to these other outside agencies.
I can kind of start with what I think, and then you guys can tell me if that should be different. But to me, the liaison, especially for the city committees, or all of them for that matter, is to, you're a non-voting member. You're there to go to the meetings and listen. And if they have a question, they will ask. And you will report back to the council, things that are going on during those meetings. Or if we have a question for the committee, we'll ask you to present it and you will approach the committee. That's how I kind of see it, to be kind of eyes and ears for those committees to report back to council.
I get a clarification. When you give your opinion, you're only given an opinion if you're asked, not that you give an opinion because you want to give an opinion.
I would recommend to, if they ask, if we're on the committee, again, I think on the 50-year vision process, you are
Yes.
a voting member, so that is a little different. You can, but if you are just a liaison, I would recommend to just listen.
Mayor, I think we need to distinguish here in between city committees and liaisons. So city committees, like the 50-year committee, that's a voting member. A liaison, for example, to like the port, to the school, to 911, I see a lot of that as just being basically attending meetings and reporting back to council on things that may impact the city. More of just keeping council informed about the different things that those organizations are doing.
Yeah, I agree. Like Columbia Economic Team, I'm a board member, so I will be a member and give my opinions. And at the traffic safety, I would assume that is that a meeting where you all talk and give your opinions, and it's not just listen. Like the 911, Parks Committee, Columbia County Commissioners Meeting, Economic Development Committee, I think are those types of meetings where just listening.
Mr. Mayor, just also, so I think, we're citizens of the community. We are voting at large voters in Scappoose. And so, we might attend these meetings and have things we want to say. So for example, I attend school board meetings as an educator and as a parent. But when I'm making a public comment, I'm very specific in saying, tonight I'm speaking to you as a parent or as an educator, et cetera. Or tonight I am speaking to you as the city council liaison to the school district, just like clearly stating your purpose. Councilor Miller has a passion with this, the 911 communication. If he chooses to make a public comment, he would clearly state that he's speaking, as a resident of Columbia County, and not speaking on behalf of the city, just as I would do for the school. So I think there's also differentiation in how you present yourselves in some of these more public, broader meetings.
Mayor, I would disagree with that. I can say that I am a city councilor, I'm elected, and I do have the authority to say that I'm a councilor. I do not say that I am on city council or, represent as a whole, but I am elected and I do have the authority, just as any other councilor does on this on this city council, to say that you are a councilor, to identify as a councilor.
Again, too, is if us as a council ask a liaison to get information at a committee meeting, I would think you would then speak up or ask questions on behalf of the council, trying to get more information. So you can either speak at their public comments portion or ask questions that council is trying to learn.
Peter, do you mind, clearly we're having two different opinions up here. I wasn't like trying to call anyone out, or I was just giving an example to those that are new, how I've been told to present myself in public and how I speak on record in these other meetings. In fact, by stating that I was speaking as a parent rather than a city councilor, that actually worked to my benefit, where I could prove that I was not speaking or representing the city in the things that I was saying. Do you mind going into that a little bit?
So we received a complaint based on a school board meeting, and which of course they had tape, and you had expressed your opinion on a topic, and you said, I'm speaking as a parent of children in the Scappoose School District. And I think that the goal is to avoid confusion. So if you are expressing your opinion, I mean, the what the Secretary of State's office says is that people can use their title. So even appointed people, like if they're a member of the Planning Commission, can say, Planning Commission Chair. What they're not supposed to say though, as is, and this is a blurry distinction, but as a member of the Scappoose Planning Commission, I know that, right? So they say you can use your title, but you're not supposed to use, you're not supposed to say, as a result of something, as a result of the title. I think that if, if you're like, I'm a liaison to this committee, it's making you do need to make sure that you're clarifying that you're not speaking for the city council when you're, however you do that, as an individual that is a member of the Scappoose City Council and cares about the issue, or as the liaison, I've been asked to gather information. I personally am concerned. But if it's where people believe that the city council itself is taking a position either on legislation in Salem, that's where it comes up. Sometimes, the mayor will be asked, Mayor Burge was asked to, sign as mayor, and then it comes up, okay, well, is this on your own, or has the city council authorized you to do this? And that's where you need to be really careful, because as your team agreement says, you each have one vote, and then you represent the majority of the votes on the council when you're in public. So hopefully that gives you guys some clarity.
So if you do, counselor so-and-so, but as a private citizen, and then speak your opinion, I mean, if you're recognizing yourself as a counselor, you're not recognizing that you're speaking for the council. Could you clarify, like Megan did as a parent?
So when I have been asked to go to Salem and provide testimony specifically on like land use or UGB issues, I will state that I am the city attorney for 4 jurisdictions, but I'm speaking in my own capacity as a land use attorney. Because what I don't want is then whoever your senator or representative is saying, your city attorney was down in Salem advocating for some outcome. So, I do that because I've seen instances where I think people have misled. It happened with the county commissioner, and she was actually asked, "Are you speaking on behalf of the commission?" She said yes, and she wasn't. So that's the sort of thing where they then had to recess the entire hearing, call the county, clarify that that was not accurate, and then you lose all trust. So if you guys are testifying, I think it's appropriate to say I was appointed as the liaison to this committee so that people understand that. And if you follow up and saying I'm speaking on my own behalf, so that they understand that 4 members of the council didn't vote for you to say a specific thing. Now, if they did, then you clarify that. Normally, when I'm here, I'm speaking in an individual capacity as a Scappoose liaison, but the city council has asked me to specifically advocate on our behalf for this. So then everybody in the room knows exactly the extent of your authorization. And it always makes sense to over clarify versus to allow people to make assumptions, because they can come to the wrong conclusion, and it can create some bad feelings.
Santiago?
With that being said, Peter, it's still, to me, would be for me very confusing for me to attend a meeting and say I am a council member, but then I have my own opinion as a citizen in the same meeting. So is that what you're saying, that at the same meeting,
Well,
within the same breath, I'm saying I'm this, but right now I'm speaking of.
So I think that a lot of people in the community will know that you're a Scappoose City Councilor. And so it's acknowledging that I am a member of the Scappoose City Council, but I'm speaking in my own personal capacity. Just allows them to know, because they might recognize you, they might have seen you in the paper, whatever, and so they're wondering, okay, she's a Scappoose City Councilor. Was she sent here, and did they ask her to provide this testimony? And if they did, then you'd of course say that council asked me to attend this meeting and provide our insight onto this issue. Or I am a Scappoose City Councilor, but I want to clarify that I'm speaking today in my individual capacity. And it seems awkward, but you get used to it after a while.
That answer, are we okay?
Can I ask a question? Sorry. EDC Chair, and Andrew has been assigned as our liaison, and last time it was Josh, and unfortunately, we didn't see Josh, and so I was hoping that Andrew would actually be a partner for us as an extension of your council. That incorrect? He wouldn't be able to speak at our meetings, just then.
I would assume if you're asking him questions and want him to speak, then you're inviting him to participate.
Our former Mayor Burge would actively participate in our meetings as well as the city manager.
So the role of ex officio is that you don't vote. So if something's come up and they ask you your opinion, or do you have a sense of where the city's council's headed on this issue, signage on the Crown Z Trail, say, oh, we're talking about that at the meeting on the 6th. And I think it's a great idea, or I don't like it that well, or whatever it is. The risk, of course, is that oftentimes the boards will defer to the counselor. And so it's just making sure that the opinion that a counselor as liaison is expressing is just their own.
Yeah, because I attended some EDCs and you guys would even ask me questions in the audience. And so if it's with your visioning and your branding, if you're asking him questions of what does he think, I think you would assume that it's just personal.
But he can participate.
But yeah, participate.
And we'd really rely on that partnership.
And he'll tell you when he comes to you with something from the council. Okay, old business, ordinance 910, an ordinance relating to massage businesses, creating Scappoose Municipal Code, chapter 5.20, massage facilities. We had many changes on. Oh, my mistake. There was discussion, and so all in favor of the 2023 city council liaisons, say aye. Aye. Opposed? You. So I just read that. We're back on public hearing, first reading. I think there was enough changes last time to go back to first reading. So, Chief Legal and Isaac, did you guys want to give an update?
So you are correct. After the last council meeting, we got quite a bit of public comment. There was obviously enough concern that we needed to relook at this a bit more. And the changes were so much that we decided we need to come back on a second first reading to make sure appropriately due to the amount of changes. Quickly, I'd just like to point out some of the public comment. One of the first comments we got was from Shelby Fagan. She says in here that LMTs are regulated already, and they are. We're not trying to regulate LMTs. That's the state's job. She does correctly point out is that we can regulate businesses. And she also points out that there are some businesses that said use massage businesses as a front for illicit activity. This is also bolstered by the letter from the state massage board who says the same. So I think we're actually on the same page about what the purpose of this is. It's not to try to keep LMTs from practicing. It's not to try to regulate them anymore, require them to go through more certification. It is meant to make sure that the businesses that operate here in Scappoose are not engaging in illicit activity, and that we also want to do is legitimize the massage businesses that are here. When somebody goes to a massage business, they know they're not going somewhere might have interactions they don't want to. What we did take from her comment was that some of the language we had was out of alignment with the state massage board's language for definitions. So we actually reviewed that quite heavily and made sure that the language for our definition section aligns with state law, so that as we're applying these ordinance, it's directly translatable to what I'm not seeing here. There was another public comment that came in quite late. I think I have received it. There was a public comment from a local massage therapist who has been practicing here, who is very much in support of this. And I just want to make sure that was on the record. I've talked with multiple LMTs. And they've all said that this will do a lot of things. It will legitimize their business. It will keep them safe from having people proposition them, sexual assault, harassment, other things that they have all faced. That's really what we want to do, right? We want to create safe. I just want to review the changes. There are quite a lot. I kind of started at the top of the ordinance and went through it. So these changes are in page order. We changed the whereas clause to make it more clear of exactly what we do here. This is not about one business. This is not about regulating LMTs. This is specifically targeted at sure that illicit activity being conducted at these places of business as a pattern and history of.
Excuse me, Isaac, can you refer to a page when you were talking about changes?
I didn't list them, but I can. Yeah. So the page would be 72 in your packet. I'm at with the whereas clauses. On the definitions section, page 74, we changed the definition of massage and licensed massage therapist to align with the Oregon State Massage Board's definitions. This was what was pointed out by Ms. Fagan. Found that that was correct. Like I said, I didn't index the pages, so it's a second. On pages 77, 76, we talked about making sure that the applicants substantiate that the individuals in their place of business that will be giving massages are actual LMTs. That's the requirement in Oregon. If you use massage in the name of your business, if you're giving massages or as a business, you have to have an LMT. So we just added that in. Again, she was correct. That wasn't in there. So we want to make sure we're aligned with that. We reviewed the section on background checks quite extensively. So page 77, we completely tore that apart and reworded it to kind of really differentiate between the different groups of people that we're trying to background check, because different folks have different requirements. So if you're an LMT and you get an LMT license, the first time you get your license, you get a background. The State Massage Board looks at your background. They do a criminal history, very extensive background. That said, it could cause a situation where LMTs might not want to establish a business if we ask them to come here and do that all over again. So what we're going to do is we're going to align that with the language we had talked about, where once you have a background check, you're kind of exempt for a few years. What we'll do is if a new LMT comes in and says they want a business and they've had a background check in the last 3 years, we'll exempt them for that, so that we can substantiate that with the massage board. The other groups of people would be what we call applicants, principal, managing agent, and equity holders. Those would be people that would need a background check. We would not allow them to substantiate that they had a background check in the past. We would just do that. Again, once they've done that, successfully passed it, they would get a 3-year exemption. And we do have a spot in here to allow for background check of potentially employees, depending on what comes back on various other background checks. There are other employees that are part of businesses. You have receptionists, whatever else you might have. So depending on what comes back on a background check, the chief of police wanted to be able to exercise that and look a little deep. We also added in a very large section here about criteria mitigating circumstances. This language is taken from the state of Oregon, the Massage Board as well. This is criteria, most of it that they use when they're looking to make a decision on a background check. We thought that that was something we should align with them so that we're kind of in lockstep. We did add some extra things into the mitigating circumstances, just kind of make it more clear that as we're conducting these background checks, we really want the government to weigh these mitigating circumstances against prior history. We don't want to make it so that somebody who has a history isn't allowed to be, or isn't allowed to have. It's not what we're at.
I have a question. It does talk about license verification. Do they have to do that occasionally, more than just when they get their LMT card, or do they do that every few years?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two parts to the answer. So for an LMT, you have to go back every 2 years and get a new certification. So that can lapse. You can let it go and not be an LMT anymore. So at that 3-year mark, we do want to check that again and make sure they still are upholding their LMTs. Again, like I stated earlier, the state requires it. If you're going to be giving massage as a business, you have to have it. That would be part of the ongoing. That one, there's no cost associated with that. So in a situation where you're an LMT, you've had a background check in 3 years, we would still look at your license to make sure it's valid, but we don't charge for that. That doesn't take more than 30 seconds. It's publicly available information on the Massage Board site. It's very easy and quick to access. I checked it myself today actually for sure that was there, and it does work. It's pretty quick.
The state doesn't require additional background checks every
That is correct.
3 years.
So after you get the initial background check, you do not have to have another one, which is why you want to do that every 3 years. In here in the packet, you'll see that there was some documentation of a business that Chief looked into, and there was actually an LMT that was in practice there. So license had expired. It's now renewed, but there's no preemption to illicit activity. You could be an LMT and or not, and really want to just kind of close the loop, make sure we're looking at everybody and scrutinizing them the same, but also being consistent and revisiting, rechecking, making sure that they're complying with state law and our we also clarified that police department staff will be responsible for conducting the background checks in that section, and that the chief of police will be the ultimate decision maker about the verification. We also made it very explicit in there that there is an appeals process. That's in the normal business licensing section. So if somebody feels that the decision was made improperly, they can appeal that directly to council. We thought that was important as well to make sure that businesses knew, people coming here knew that there are other options. There's no question about it. Right, exemptions. So the exemption section we reviewed a lot and revisited. Again, this goes straight to the massage board. They have exemptions for actually licensed massage therapists and business locations. So we took their exemptions for business locations and brought those into this as well to kind of align it. See a kind of a theme. We want to align it with state law. It's something we not do as good of a job as I should have done on. But anyway, so we pulled that all out, pulled it directly from their criteria, and we actually added a couple more to make sure that it was really clear that we're not targeting every massage therapist. We're not targeting massage therapists who are part of chiropractic, like a doctor's office, sports medicine. Maybe they're here temporarily at an event, or they're training people, or maybe there's a class of PCC. Right? We don't want to. Those aren't the businesses that have a history being involved in this act. Really wanted to narrowly target this at those businesses that that have a history of that. We don't want to unduly burden. We just made sure that our exemptions are clear.
So to get straight, if a chiropractor or acupuncturist has an LMT on staff, or they offer that through their their company, they don't need to go through the background check.
That's correct. They wouldn't actually even qualify for this license. They would apply for a business license like any other business owner. That exemption was in there last time as well. That came also from the ordinance we looked at in Colorado. It's very common. I think again that there's not that nexus between those types of businesses and the kind of activity we're trying to do. We just want to make sure that that section was very clear about what we were tracking.
Just quick question, Isaac. Is it a repeat G with section H number 2? I don't know if there was because it's and students not compensated, and then again, it's not compensated, but I don't see how that one reflects a student of like it's not reflecting G is not reflecting I don't know what student of what.
You're asking about section G and section
Yeah,
H.
like is that like a typo? Was that supposed to mean
G is misaligned. It should be F numeral I.
One of F.
So it
F.
just was misaligned when I copied and pasted those comments. So,
Oh, okay. Just confusing. Okay.
so it comes off of E, massage clinics operate as part of a certified class. of student training if any charge for massage does not exceed the cost and the student's not compensated. Those F and G actually are. should
1
be
and 2.
1 and 2.
1 and 2,
underneath.
I see, okay. Makes sense.
So it is repeated, but it's purposely repeated because they're doing.
Thank you.
We made some small textual edits in terms of capitalizing scrivener's errors and did not substantially change the rest of the ordinance in the enforcement. I have for the staff report.
I did see one letter from the director of the Oregon Board of Massage Therapists that encourages local governments to work diligently to detect, prevent, and prosecute traffickers.
That's correct. And the chief of police was actually on a call today with a group who was working on illicit, frankly, human trafficking. And they were directly talking about this topic in the context of massage businesses for quite a while. And they kept saying over and over, the best way to prevent this is ordinance. Put an ordinance in place, prevent, you'll be able to shut down businesses. You will keep, who would come here and use, frankly, the city of Scappoose to do something like that, keep them out. And what we're doing is, said it before, it's not unique across the country. This is the first time in Oregon. So I understand why it's, we need to really get this right and it's really important, but this ordinance, this is the first step to really being a part of that change and making sure that this community is not engaged or involved or complicit in doing that kind of activity.
More questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I was just curious if the chief wanted to add anything.
I have actually been in talk with other chiefs around the state, and they're waiting to see what happens here. So I think and I hope this passes, that we're going to be a trend center and other communities will take the same approach. What I uncovered is a huge network, just simply not one place. And you need to understand that.
We have already been contacted for copies of the ordinance, even though it's in draft form. There's interest in other organizations picking this up, seeing this as a model. They're aware that these businesses are a problem, and like us, they don't have something to prevent them from establishing. They don't have something to easily shut them down. It's very complicated under actual criminal statute to approach these businesses. So this kind of allows us a pressure relief. We can go get at it through a business license, make sure that they don't establish, and that checks in place to keep that kind of behavior out of the city.
Yes.
Peter, I believe last meeting you mentioned, did you run this by the Attorney General or you got back from the state?
I had run some specific scenarios by our district attorney. And to better understand the scope of the issue. And the truth is that none of us really understands the scope of the issue, but it's become apparent that the issue is pretty big. And it's not just the impact upon these, I'll call them bad actors. It's also that then people have an idea about services that are provided by legitimate massage therapists that it put those people at risk as well. So I think that, a lot of our discussion was about his ability to prosecute these sort of things. And then the other thing that I looked at is whether other cities check to make sure that these sort of businesses that purport to be provide massage therapy are actually licensed with the state. And based on what I've seen, they simply don't. So nobody's really doing an independent verification. And so these businesses are getting a business license, even though they're not licensed by the state to provide the services. And then members of the public will see that massage in the name and believe that it's a legitimate business when really these are providing illicit services, some of them.
And that kind of goes to the point. I did talk with an LMT local here who said that they particularly had experienced many times over their career, propositioning, harassing people, assaulting. Heard stories from friends. This is not just about one thing or the other or business license. This is a very complicated issue, and frankly, if you drive to certain parts of Portland and you see businesses with massage in their name, it's kind of a spoken, what's going on there. And we think we're trying to prevent that. That's part of what we're trying.
Yes, Counselor Holm.
So I very much appreciate the goal of this and hope that we can come up with something meaningful that we can leverage to make sure that this type of activity does not happen in the city. But I also want to make sure that in performing the background checks, we are also, I guess, weighing, the privacy and ability for someone to be able to, well, maybe not privacy, but the ability for them to pursue, real and meaningful work if they may have a conviction in their past or maybe a guilty plea. And so I just want to make sure that I'm reading sections H and A correctly. Because I feel like this was a concern raised in the last council session. And as I see it written, it seems very, very broad to me. So section H, if I'm reading this right, so if it's found that there is violence, so this is on page 78, if there are acts relating to violence, weapons, substance abuse, or narcotics, sexual misconduct, or prostitution relating to misconduct of any kind, and human trafficking, those would be grounds for denial. Is that correct?
Potentially. Those would be things those are examples of the kind of crimes we'd be looking at, but not necessarily. We say in there will be considered, but we don't say that will deny. Also in the same section, right underneath an I, criteria and mitigating circumstances, we make it very clear that who's doing this background check, whoever's looking at it, needs to look at the nature of the crime, how long ago it was, what happened after that. They can look at references, they can get letters of support. There's a lot of things that can be done to mitigate. And you're right. We don't want to prevent legitimate people who are maybe had a mistake in their past from getting a business here. But we do need to look at that. And so we wrote this section I that goes all the way through multiple different types of things we have to look at, mitigate, to make sure that when the chief's reviewing, he's not just looking background check. He has to go and say, okay, what was the nature of the crime? What happened afterwards? Did somebody write a letter of support for this? An LMT, a teacher? Was it a friend? Was it another LMT? There's a lot of ways to mitigate that. I wanted to make sure it was very clear to the applicants that they can do that. It doesn't have to be, open and shut. We can always go back and ask for more, and they can always offer more.
So I guess, thank you for that explanation. I guess just two things I would maybe ask we consider or discuss. Substance abuse or narcotics. I don't know to what extent there are criminal convictions of that, but I imagine that there could be a good amount of folks with something like that in their past. I would maybe rather that be changed to like maybe trafficking in narcotics or distribution or maybe something that would kind of, elevate that beyond a simple possession charge or some other substance abuse.
Yeah, we can definitely look at that. I would say that, we did write this to not be overly prescriptive and also not overly vague. If somebody, if we write in there, we're only going to look at, crimes related to the sale of products, right? We could be ignoring somebody who has a very long and storied history of alcohol abuse or use of other narcotics, right? We don't want to not see that either, or see it and not be able to do so. So what I attempted to do here was list Chief and I talked about the kinds of crimes that he sees being connected. Massage board season says these kind of crimes are linked to this kind of behavior, the kind of behavior we want to stop. So those are the kind of ones we enumerated. It doesn't mean that we're going to look at that and see a crime and say, oh, you're done, you can't have a license. There's some subjectivity that goes into this. And that's also why we listed in here, there is an appeals process. So if they feel they've been wronged by the police department, they have an option to come. We enumerate again. You can come here underneath this code, and that will reiterate that on the forms too, so that the applicants know not just the ordinance, but actually on the forms that they read. Here's your process for it. You feel like you didn't get a fair share, please come before council and make your case.
Isaac, may I ask a question? So on the actual application, if they do have a conviction, obviously they're asked to disclose that ahead of time, right? And then they're given a chance to disclose the circumstances surrounding the event, correct? Okay. That's usually what mitigates things is the actual circumstances surrounding an event. So I just wanted to make sure and put on record that they are given a chance up front to disclose the conviction and also explain the circumstances surrounding the incident as well.
I believe that, you know, folks in law enforcement who will be reviewing this are reasonable. I don't think they're here to, you know, an LMT who maybe served some time for something in their past 20 years ago, you know, from providing LMT services here. I think that they're here to keep businesses who are trafficking, who are engaged in, you know, certain services, money laundering, those kind of larger scale issues don't establish here. And in the case that they don't, let's say they make a mistake, there's an appeals process. It's free. It just takes some time. They come here before you, whoever's on council, and make their case publicly.
Pete, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I can tell this has been a whole lot of work, and I just like to say you guys did a great job. It's nice to be on the front end of the curve once in a while on an issue like this. And anyway, Isaac and Chief Legal, you know, nice job. Thank you.
But to that, I mean, we kind of are on the front end, so I would hope that if this goes, that after time you can revisit and see if there were issues that need to be adjusted, or if it didn't have enough teeth or had too much teeth, you can adjust it.
Absolutely, and you
Try
know,
to get the outcomes we want.
and if this gets us passed, you know, I'm happy to make a report 6 months, a year down the road. We do department reports all the time. We can make this part of a department report, so you can see firsthand. Okay, it's been 6 months. Here's what happened. Here's the comments we got. It's all public record. Here's what the LMTs thought, or maybe the fee's too high, or maybe it's too low. Maybe, you know, it's too onerous. Maybe it's, you know, not catching what we want it to catch. You know, we can always revisit code.
Okay, if nothing else, this is,
Can I just add one more thing on section H? One thing that I noticed that is missing that we may want to include, I don't see anything around money laundering or another activity that would suggest some nefarious business operation.
I think at the end of the day, we don't want to get too specific. The main purpose of this ordinance is to stop illicit sexual activity and human trafficking. So I need to have some teeth in this so that we can prevent these bad actors from coming to town.
So I guess my suggestion was adding money laundering to this as another crime that
We could add it, but I don't think we have to start listing every individual crime. I think we'll start losing sight of, you know, what the main focus is. I mean, if that pops up, obviously we'll definitely look into it. But I just don't want to get in, like, have a complete list of all the crimes, because I think that kind of narrows down what I can and cannot do. You understand, like, I just don't want to keep listing crimes. I kind of want to keep it somewhat broad.
It's a fine line to walk. Right? Last time I was here, I was talking about balance, right? One light for balancing between the needs of, you know, legitimate businesses to come here and have an easy time getting a license, know what the process is, be able to establish, create a life, career, a family. On the other side, we have, you know, the lives of those who are being trafficked, and balancing out, how do we prevent this activity without unduly burdening the other? This is very similar. Where, you know, we're going to look at everything. When a background check comes back, it's very hard to ignore those things. But the low level, you know, 10 years in the past, you had a drug charge, and you know, you had a run in with money, you tried to pass some fake bills, you didn't know they were bills, but they got on the record or something. That will come out. We have to rely on the law enforcement just to look at the totality of the circumstances. Once, twice, was it 20 years ago? And we can certainly add it if you want. I mean, you're going to make a motion maybe tonight, but you can always add that in there, see if you have years. But you're right, that is something that is linked to this kind of behavior. I think from the perspective of prevention, though, I think it's pretty clear that what we're trying to do here is prevent. So if I was somebody who's looking to establish a business that's not legit, I might think twice.
but I see you do put violence on there, which is pretty vague, yet money laundering is pretty specific.
I think what the chief is saying though is that under H, he has discretion. There's a broad phrase there to allow you discretion, right? And then the subsection goes into basically talking about what the criteria is to meet
Yes.
that discretion.
Correct.
Does that help, Kim?
Yes, as long as this is not the list
It
that
is,
is going to raise the flag.
it is not the list, but it's just some descriptors. But we could never get into a list because there might be other things that pop up in their background that are red flags. Money laundering is, yes, it's part of those businesses. They make so much cash, and when they are fined, they don't mind paying the fines. The gentleman that was involved in the one that we were able to close was just fined last week, $27,000. And he's still operating other massage parlors throughout the state.
So that actually goes to the part of the purpose. State Massage Board licenses LMTs, they control facility permits, but they don't have the authority to go shut a business down. That's something that localities have. When you read the letter from the state massage therapist, that's what they're talking about, is they only have so much authority and control. Our role at a municipal level, if we're going to be a partner, be to be able to shut these businesses down, to prevent them in the first place. I'll kind of have a role. Their role is keeping people who might abuse that being an LMT out. Cali's role is maybe making sure businesses can establish, would do that kind of the services here.
Good. For questions?
No, I'm just saying, since it's back to first reading, is this going to delay the ordinance to being passed? Yeah, so that's unfortunate, but
And speaking of, this is a public hearing, so I will now open up the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on the ordinance relating to massage businesses creating Scappoose Municipal Code Chapter 5.20 massage facilities? Name and city for the record and come on up and we'll get you a microphone.
Name's Alicia Higas, from Scappoose.
Yeah, if you could speak in, we can hear you, but to be recorded and them to hear you.
My name's Alicia Higas of Scappoose. I just wanted to let you guys know that I really find this really important for this to pass. It's hard to say how important it is until you've experienced being next to an illegal business like this. They draw in people from out of town that don't have any good intentions in our community. As a business owner, I've had to have my door locked more than unlocked. I've had to make sure that I know what clients are coming into my business. If they don't fill out an intake beforehand, I get a little nervous because a lot of these clients, they come to the door and they want a service right now. And they don't understand why they can't get a service right now. So I've had to stop people at the door, and it's doesn't make you feel safe as a business owner. And like the chief was saying, these people have so much money that fees don't matter. And also they have enough money to push people out of their space. They've been closed down for 2.5 months, but yet they haven't moved any of their stuff out. And my building owner, 30 days after telling them I was having to report them, gave me a 30-day notice. He just wants his building back. I've abided by the terms of the lease. I pay my rent. I improved his building. And this could happen not to just any massage business, but any business that has a good moral compass and that will stand up to do the right thing. We can't trust all business owners or property owners to be looking at the best interests of the community. And I just really hope that you guys can understand the importance of it. It make me as a massage therapist feel safer. And I think that will make my clients feel safer knowing
that the massage therapists in our community are law abiding. And if anybody has any questions.
You.
Good, thank you.
Thank
Thank you for sharing.
I could marry just like anyone else going to talk? Okay.
One that wrote the, I'm from Scappoose. So thank you. I just want to say thank you for taking my comments and the changes and I can get behind it. Heard it. I appreciate your time and making it align and that stuff. So I do want to say, and I don't know, and I did because I talked to the Oregon board myself. I think his name was Jeff. He did say that every 2 years when we renew our license, that they do another background check. So I don't know, and I know a lot of us are exempt. You know, you're looking for bigger business. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because we do go through another background check every 2 years. Okay, yeah, because when I was talking to him, that because he said that when you renew your license, we have to do another background check. You have to do generic checking off of our renewal. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I will close the public hearing at this time. Go to Chief Legal.
I just wanted to add that Alicia was a victim of this and everything. I can verify everything she had just said. They were caused a lot of pain to this. I witnessed it myself. I witnessed because they were in so close proximity. Gentleman going to her location thinking it was the other location. And just so you know, that type of behavior is on the web. So it does attract people from out of town. You simply go do an internet search and you can find those type of services. And we were on, that web page. So, there was a lot of, heartache for her and her husband when this was going on.
Chief, when you say, I just want to clarify something. When you say those services, you mean the illicit services are on like a back page, so to speak?
Yeah, the illicit,
to this?
yes, the illicit services. Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's not even a black website page. If you go on and Google whatever comes to your mind for massage businesses, it will just pop up. It's not even like on the dark web. It's in the light, like quite literally. It's unfortunately, it's just very clear what some of these businesses are offering. As I'm speaking, I would like to offer. I did not know. We did look at the renewal policy for the state and did not indicate anywhere in there that they got a new background check when they renew the LMTs.
I can add to that. So I did speak to Jeff, and the first initial one is a complete national background check. When they renew, it's just in state. So they don't do the big heavy duty national one.
So I would suggest changing that language.
I'm trying to read through there to see if it does state anywhere on there that if they have done a background check and show proof of it, they do not need another.
It does initially, but not for subsequent. I would suggest changing the language so that on subsequent renewals of a business license, LMTs don't need a background check if their LMT is still valid.
Mr. Mayor. Does that sit well with you? You're saying it'll only look at the state level, not the national level. So would you prefer that it stay as is so that it would?
No, that's what the state does. I was just clarifying what the state does. So the state does a complete full one, and then when they renew, it's literally just in state. So they don't go outside. They don't use NCIC, the National Crime Database. They basically just use our in-state.
Would you use a national database?
I would mirror whatever the massage board does.
So it's the same thing then. As soon as she said that, I just renewed my teaching license last night. And then today they said I passed my background check. And I was like, well, didn't.
And because it's an established business.
Yeah, but it comes back. Yeah.
We're just trying to
With
make
the
it, again,
process.
we're just trying to make this easy and unburdensome, right?
Yeah.
So we were just, when I was writing, I was not aware that happened. It wasn't very clear from the paperwork that I could find.
I'd like to amend that section then.
We do that now, so we vote on something
Yeah.
and then it will come back. Okay.
So can we get a clarification on the amendment, please? Is it, can you clarify the amendment with the
Yep.
change?
So what you'll be amending is on page 77, section E, exemptions, LMTs who have successfully completed background check
Yeah.
within the last 3 years. We're going to substantiate it.
Well, I think they would be able to show that they've completed a background check.
Yeah, so
anytime
it'd
they
be
renew.
specifically, it'll be on section C, it says do not need to submit to the initial background check. Will be do not need to submit to a background check instead of to the initial. That would allow us to look like if in 6 years they hadn't renewed or hadn't had a background check. But until that point, they would be exempt.
More comments, more discussion. Okay, this is on first reading. But do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that council adopt ordinance 910 as amended with the change of licensure and the background check. An ordinance relating to massage businesses, creating Scappoose Municipal Code, Chapter 5.20, massage facilities.
Second.
Have a first and a second. My question, on page 80 where you're changing 1 and 2, that have to be in the motion.
No, it's a scrivener's.
Scrivener's errors are, yeah.
Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Or repeat. So we have no vote at this moment. This will come back as a second reading, ordinance 910, an ordinance relating to massage businesses, creating Scappoose Municipal Code, Chapter 5.20. Massage facilities is on first reading and will come back to council at our next regularly scheduled meeting for discussion and potential adoption. Okay, new business, County Trail Interpretive Signage Report, the County Commissioner Casey Garrett.
Good evening. I have Wella here with me from the economic team. And here to talk about interpretive signage on the Crown Z Trail. Whether you want to put a PowerPoint or not, I'll leave that up to you, but I might have to put up at the very least on track. So as many of you are aware of the Crown Z Trail, obviously from Scappoose to St. Helens, the start or the end of the trail, however you look at it, is at Chapman Landing, and it goes actually 25 official miles now into the city of Vernonia. We have installed a series of interpretive signage from Highway 30 to inside of the city of Vernonia. And there's about 36 structures now complete that include trail information, wayfinding signage, and then a series of interpretive signage that goes into local history, geological history, Native American history, native plants and species, anything you can kind of imagine when it comes to education. Educational aspects of specific locations along the trail. It's really gained some steam and some regional recognition specifically for this interpretive signage. So the county's pretty excited about it. I've spoken with some of you in the past about extending the same concept on the 2 miles of the Scappoose owned part of the Crown Zellerback Trail. And in that, working with your public works director and previous city administrator Mike Sykes, had definitely some interest and even approval to install some signage specifically at the Chapman Chapman Landing Trailhead parking area. Now, this has been going on for a few years. We haven't got around to installing anything specific at the Chapman parking area. But after a few years of these installations, are proposing an opportunity to look more holistically at the 2 miles of the Scappoose section of trail and install potentially a series of interpretive signage to really hone in on what's special about the 2 miles of the Scappoose Trail. Oh, here we go. So as you can see, this is kind of a branding exercise that we've done, but it's 23 miles here, and we need to update it because now it's closer to 26 going into Vernonia. Next slide, please. One of the key components of our kiosks is trailhead kiosks for wayfinding. So at every trailhead along this trail, we have kiosks that shows a map of the trail, where you're located specifically, and general trail rules that are helpful to the user. So for Scappoose, there's the Turtec Trailhead and Chapman Landing Trailhead to consider for a kiosk to provide this sort of information. On the side there, I've provided just some examples of historical signage that we've installed on these kiosks and a website that interacts with the kiosks, crownztrail.com. That's pretty impressive. We've had our Columbia County Museum Association help us build this website. So the interpretive signage on the kiosks is in a way interactive with a website. So if you see something interesting on kiosk that you come by and you're within cell phone range, which Scappoose would be on the entirety of the 2 miles of the Scappoose owned part of the trail, you can scan a QR code and it takes you directly to a website, provide more in-depth information of whatever you're looking at, and then have access to all of the other historical information along the trail. So these kiosks scale-wise, for the larger kiosks, gives you a sense of the scale. These would be trailhead kiosks, again, providing the name of the trailhead, the map of the entire trail, and then these are generic informational signage signs that we have installed on all of the Columbia County kiosks to include operating hours, general trail rules, and any other notification. Actually have signage made up if you guys choose to put kiosk in at your trailheads. We already have printed out these signs with a grant that we received a few years back, anticipating the opportunity to include the trailheads in Scappoose to match the trailheads along the rest of the trail. So I know that you guys have went a slightly different direction with Turtec. I would still promote the idea or encourage the idea of considering this sort of, I don't believe a map is installed at your Turtec trailhead, but with this structure and look, there's a consistency that's on a 25-mile system that we're missing for the 2 trailheads that you have here in Scappoose. So a general idea of trailhead kiosks that's more of our wayfinding concept, specifically for the trailhead parking areas, Turtec and Chapman Landing. Chapman Landing, as some of you may be aware, the county transferred Chapman Landing to the city with a certain level of criteria there, that there was a collaborative effort on the final design of Chapman Landing. So the county would propose that we have some shared branding with county logo and Scappoose seal on that particular kiosk. Of course, we could work that out, but then assuming Turtec is very exclusively Scappoose Trail, well, both of them are. This could really go either way, but there's a city branding. And then there's a train image that our Crown Z Trail Committee has developed over the last several years. So that's another opportunity for branding to go next to a trailhead name. Just a general look, these kiosks, there's 2 different sizes. This one is the larger size. It's approximately 6 foot by 6 foot. A local manufacturer, Pacific Stainless, helped us develop this design. There's metal posts that are powder coated that are embedded into the ground, which is quite nice because you don't have to worry about, I don't know if you came across the wooden kiosks that are very common at trailheads and parks. Over time, even with pressure treated material, wood starts to decay and needs to be replaced, say 10 to 20 years later. This design should last a very long time. And there's cedar boards that slide into these metal posts that hold up quite well themselves being cedar, but being cedar have a nice aesthetic. And then also, since it's not touching the ground, lasts quite a while and is also an easy medium to attach signage to. So this is one of the structures that the primary structure that we've installed along the trail. And there's a couple of different configurations that they can be installed with this slide. And then a 3x3 kiosk. This was based off of an original sketch. We have but we have the those plans and fabrication of some of these structures in process right now. Approximately a 3x3 foot angled kiosk for an individual image to look down on, and that actually came from input that we have received from the city of having some concern with the larger kiosks blocking viewpoints. So a little more standard kiosk design and works well with individual image. And we have, like I said, some of these being production. General concept on price for these, the material prices are pretty solid as of a few months ago. A 6x6 and a 3x3. Labor, we as a county will offer up assistance with labor for installations, and otherwise would expect that if the city likes this concept, city public works could potentially help as well, but the county would be willing to help with the installation and even provide equipment if necessary. So taking out the labor, basic prices, the hard cost for a large kiosk, including the signage, is under $2,000, closer to $1,700, and the 3x3 individual kiosks are close to $1,000 a piece. So fairly affordable, and again, locally designed and manufactured. Take some pride in that.
Casey, may I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
The labor hours. So if our public works or your public works would be involved in the installation, what are the labor hours accounting for?
Approximate time per kiosk. And this varies if you're just installing one kiosk versus 5 kiosks. Our crew has installed these has typically installed them in sets. So this is a fairly good estimate on the time frame it's taken our crew to install these. So that 8 labor hours probably be more consistent if you were installing 3 at a time, because the post can, say 3 kiosk locations, all the posts can go in a part of a day, and then the slats in the final part of the installation can go in the next part of the day. So spread out, say over a 3-day period, or 24 work hours for a 6x6 kiosk. That's how we come up with 8 hours per kiosk.
It does make sense. I just don't know why it's listed as an expense if you're.
Well, it's expense for grant purposes. Oftentimes we've used, that's a match.
That's a good
with
answer.
an in-kind donation. So it just giving you a sense on what it takes, and it might be clearer for the ask that I might have later if I didn't even include that. But the county is willing to assist in this process to provide hours and equipment that does have value. So
First, can I ask just real quick on that? I mean, all these signs show 13 slats. Is there 13 or 12? Did it change? You have 12 2x6x8s.
oh, well, I'd have to count the holes. So there could be a difference between 6 foot, 12 boards that are 6-inch boards. So if there's a picture that shows 13 slats?
Yeah, a lot of them
Okay.
have 13. But
Well, that's either a problem with the picture or a problem with my memory of how many slats, but I believe it's 12. We could count, if you want, count the actual picture of a real picture that I'll show you in a second.
For
Yes, good.
13 year.
You have screws and nails on here?
Good catch. My nail count might be off as well.
Mayor's gonna count them.
We have a sales guy here in his regular job, so that makes sense. Funding opportunities, part of the reason about Wella, this proposal I wrote up several months ago, so there's been a little work in the meantime to help fund these, but I would be coming with an ask for some city support if we were to install these along the section of the city trail. Fairly recently, and in some work, this project we're actually extending not only to along the rest of the Crownsey Trail. We have about 15 structures in the design process for the city of Clatskanie, the city of Rainier, and actually an old section of Highway 30 on basically within the city of Prescott. If Scappoose was included in this, and since it's a countywide effort, there are some travel Oregon dollars that are passed through Columbia Economic Team. It's very important, and I'll maybe allow Wella to explain this a bit more. For consistent wayfinding and a consistent design, Travel Oregon has made that a top priority in design standards for these sorts of things. So there's some funding available, and for the city of Scappoose and really per city, around $5,000 of Travel Oregon funding available to go towards this overall project, given a match from the city for at least that amount. Want to talk any more about Travel Oregon?
Well, and with Travel Oregon, if they see us already kind of collaborating and forming a cohesive look, it helps us down the road asking for other future projects as well.
I have a question. So how many of signage do you predict, this 6x6 and in the 2 miles of Scappoose Trail that we have?
Well, if it was up to me, I could come up with a number, but I don't want to do that. I'd rather kind of show you
Estimate.
some concepts and work with the city, maybe develop a work group of sorts to really hone in and determine exact location these signs should go and what should be on them. And that's as a county, we could have our own ideas, but we put in so many of these that they've been really successful. The more people we've gotten involved to come up with the ideas and have some buy-in on the overall project, and I think it makes them more special. So that's undetermined at the moment. So that will dictate the budget over time on ultimate decision on how many we'd like to install, and it could be done in phases as well. So we could design, 10 locations, but maybe only have the money for 5. So with that, I guess funding, we have Travel Oregon dollars through Columbia Economic Team. I'd be hopeful for a city match. The county, I feel pretty comfortable putting the right package together. We have some excess materials for these because it's kind of an ongoing process. So I'm fairly confident, speaking in my individual capacity as a county commissioner, that the county could donate one of each structure type, a small kiosk and a large kiosk type, at the least to the metal components, which are a decent chunk of the cost. So, if you're looking at 5, I want to see at least a $10,000 budget. My goal for the city and your stretch, I think $15,000 of a budget for materials would go a long ways and really allow us to do
Yeah.
something neat.
So going back, I'm sorry to interrupt, but going back, Commissioner Garrett, on what you was talking about working with the city, are you, just to confirm, are you working with the Park and Rec Committee in determining how many signs should be in the 2 miles of the trail?
Well, I am, I'm involved with a few Parks and Rec committees. The Crownsey Trail Committee in Scappoose, I've been involved with quite some time, and I'm current liaison for that committee as for our board, along with our county Parks and Rec committee. I'm a liaison for that board, and then I finagled my way into being a liaison for of sorts to the Scappoose Parks and Rec Committee board, because we have assets that the county has parks assets here in the city of Scappoose. I've brought it up at some point, I think maybe one of my first meetings to bring up concept in general, but no formal proposal. So I'm coming to you guys today, to let you decide how you would like us to proceed with that. If it happened to be a work group in the Scappoose Parks and Rec Committee, I'd be happy to participate in that work group. But that's really up to you guys how you'd like to move forward. We've also, I think there's a high potential, and I've received some offers for private donations. Oftentimes with private donations or business donations, somebody wants a certain amount of recognition, and I realize that that's tricky. We don't want to turn the trail into a billboard of companies necessarily, but there is a concept to create potentially a kiosk specifically for recognizing donors to these sorts of things. And as I said, the county could assist. Installations, there's economic team money, Travel Oregon. So in general, I feel fairly confident for the overall scale and scope of the project. We could fund it, and that could come in a variety of different forms. Here are some real life examples. One at Highway 30 with the phonetic spelling of Scappoose. For those people, I don't know if that would help people pronounce it better, but that is that's the phonetic spelling of Scappoose. Some native history is at that location, and then Spitzenberg is a location that is at the Cater Road, Vernonia Highway crossing. It's really neat local history about that area. We have railroad history as an example, and then one of the kiosks with the park rules and maps that would sure be nice at potentially Turtec and Chapman Landing trailheads. So that's just to give you a feel how they look installed the life. And not going to count, but there might be 13 boards. So there's going to be an extra $10 or so there for that 13th board, and I'm not sure if I included in my budget. And again, we actually, I believe, have enough of these generic signs for the trailheads, along with a Turtec and a Chapman Landing label, I believe, on hand at the county, so that could help with cost as well. There's also a bike hub project that it's well, another concept that we could bring to this work group. A plate that was made that was kind of thrown in as a bonus. We installed how many bike hubs? For Clatskanie, Rainier, Vernonia, and I think Scappoose might have been. Okay. Oh, a bike station. So there's a special sign that shows a map of some trails around Scappoose, Travel Oregon, designed through a consultant, designed family friendly trails, bike routes in Scappoose, and developed a sign that could be installed on a structure like this. That's a large sign that would take much an entire structure. And it's never been installed. It was kind of a bonus through a grant that the county got, but could be installed on one of these structures along this mile section. So getting into concepts about what you would put on these kiosks, specifically on the 2 miles of the Scappoose section. And again, these are concepts that we've kind of uncovered, but we would want your guys' buy-in, participation, and vetting these concepts. A big one, Turtec family. I grew up with some of the Turtecs, and I know most of you, probably a lot of you know the Turtecs. I didn't realize how much depth there was to their family history locally here. Fascinating enough to you guys chose to name a trailhead after them. So it'd be really neat to show off some of that local family history, and there's a lot of documented information on the Turtec family. to whether it be at the Turtec Trailhead or anywhere between there and Chapman Landing, would still be relevant because the Turtecs actually owned Chapman Landing at one point, and they traveled that section of trail to haul logs to the log boom. So lots of great history and photos and stories about the Turtec family. Chapman Landing on its own has a ton of neat history and the logging practice between the log boom at Chapman Landing and all the way up to the city of Vernonia. There's a lot of great history and local imagery that would be for installations along the section. West Lane School, the very first school in Columbia County, happened to be right near the West Lane and DZ Trail intersection. And there's a photo of it there, and it was founded by Benjamin Watts, who I'm not sure if the Watts School, it wasn't, no, E.M. Watts, but was related to the Watts that the Watts School was named after. So there's some neat information we uncovered there. Hudson Bay trading company actually had a horse farm out in the Dike area near the trail, and there's some neat history there, along with the McKay grave site. John McKay, there is John McKay or Thomas McKay, wrong. Great history on him. So there's some neat local history that doesn't go too far back, but a couple 100-year history to consider for some of the signage. And we'd really lean hard on the Scappoose Historical Society and the Columbia County Museum Association to fine tune and develop that history and imagery that would be appropriate to put on any number of kiosks in that aisle section. Oftentimes we'll put 4 20 by 30 images on a 6 by 6 kiosk if there's good information on a specific topic, or if it's a smaller kiosk and something more specific, and there'd be less information, but something more specific to a station. Obviously, the city of Scappoose and Columbia County in general, there's a wealth of Native American history. This general area outside of Scappoose is the home of 2 recognized archaeological sites. The Meyer site was a 55 by, I think, close to 100-foot plank house. That's a nationally recognized archaeological site. We wouldn't want to name the exact location of that site for preservation purposes, but there is some really, really neat information about that site. And the Eade site, many of you may know Cindy Eade. It's a local that's involved in has been involved in the schools over the years, and was actually my, I think, recess aide in Warren School when I was a kid for a little while. She is a local Native expert, and she actually found a site that was ultimately named after her in the Dike area outside of Scappoose. So that's some good stuff that could be included. Plank houses in general, longhouses, they're also known as, very common in this area. So that's a whole topic for a kiosk. And then just Chinook artifacts. We could go on and on. Again, that would take experts and people that want more detailed information about me, this area, but would be very worthy of at least one structure in my opinion. Slide. And I don't know if all of you are familiar with wildcolumbiacounty.org, but there are a couple locals that have developed pretty impressive blog. Our county museum association has been in contact with them to help them develop interpretive signage for topics for native plants and species and animals along the trail. And they, Jonathan Hakeem and Matt DeGrossa are the 2 fellas that have developed this blog. Jonathan actually put these slides put together specifically for the 2 miles of the Scappoose Trail because of you get into the wetlands and the dikelands that just have a wealth of very interesting information about the types of diversity out there for animals and plants and species. And he's, I think he even got these down, these specific graphics down to very specific locations along the trail that relate to this imagery in a very specific way. These are drafts, would need a lot of work for a finished product, but are a great idea. I mean, they could be individual kiosks per image you see there, or developed on a larger kiosk. But these could be specific to a spot where you stop, look, and you might actually have a chance of seeing some of these specific animals or plants at locations that an expert has found mile section. So just ideas, what it kind of shows you a array of a diversity of the ideas that could be installed and into each of these kiosks. Next slide. So all in all, this is something that I know that the city has been supportive of, even down to saying, and I appreciate that, of even down to saying absolutely install some of these at, I think, more of a specific location at Chapman Landing. For me, to get that off the ground, I think, for one, we've installed, like I said, about 36 of these. We have at least 15 more in the works, and I think it's even more at this point around the county. So they take a bit of time to develop. And I think it's important to get city buy-in, city ownership in this, and then take a holistic look at the entire 2-mile stretch and not just pick a specific spot. And to be honest, I don't feel comfortable, and I don't think the county or anybody at the county does, at figuring this all out for you guys, but would really like to partner with the city to help make this happen and provide this consistency along Crown Z Trail that we're also proud of. So from here, I guess it would be more on your guys's, up to you guys to decide how to move forward, but a recommendation would be to form a group. We would like to be a part of that group. Would recommend a museum collaboration, somebody like wildcolumbiacounty.org would be great, involved with this, potentially your Scappoose Parks Committee and anybody else that has interest. Identify the locations, the content that would go to each location, establish the ultimate budget. Like I said, 15 grand would go a long ways, 5 from Travel Oregon, 5 from the city, and come up with 5 more maybe, or kind of have a range in mind around there, assuming that the city and the county could work together for the installations and not have to pay an outside contractor for that. Secure the funding and make it happen sometime over the next months to a year. Travel Oregon funding does have a sunset for availability, but if the city gave us assurance that we would move forward on something like this, we could order enough parts, manufactured parts, and the blank plates.
Well, we have funding set aside because the fiscal year ends June 30th, but then we could also, if you $8 budget proposal to Travel Oregon too.
Your dollars now versus.
I have $60 now. I'm not sure what my goal is going to be for next year yet.
That's it.
Casey, I have a couple questions. So really, just to kind of recap, the concept is to keep the general feel and the look the same throughout the whole CZ Trail area, and then the actual content on the structures is what would change, right? The real ask here is just trying to keep uniformity, so to speak.
Yes, uniformity, especially for the trail, I think is important. It's, like I said, that 2 miles of Scappoose is part of a 25 to 26 mile system at the moment. And Banks Vernonia Trail is actually looking into these structures as well and has interest. So a continuity of design, very important to us. But it is not just the trail in our eyes. It's Columbia County creating kind of a theme around the county. So beyond that, for the historical signage, we have a border and a color, that's nice is to keep continuous in a design way for the individual historical images. I don't think we're necessarily stuck on that in its entirety. The structure on its own goes a long ways. So I guess I ultimately would leave that up to the group that Scappoose decides to put on this committee. But we have beyond the structure, the signage has a certain look and feel to it. That the content on the signs look the same or can be entirely different. Might be nice to keep the border the same because that's the way 34 more structures are along the same trail system are. But I don't know if that's an absolute must. Structure, general feel to us.
Okay, and then second question is, as far as maintenance goes, it looks like these are very modular. So if there's vandalism or something like that, the boards, do they just slide out? And then how do the content actually attach to, is all that stuff really fairly simple for our public works to maintain should there be a vandalism incident?
Yes, that was an important component of of design for this. So the boards are cedar boards. Depending on cedar pricing, you're looking at, $10 for an 8-foot board and waste a couple of feet of it. Or you buy a 12-foot board and you get 2. So those can individually slide out. There's set screws in the back of the posts that go on the back. These can actually be 2-sided, but either way, there's set screws that hold the boards in. And then the individual signs are pretty darn affordable because they're also locally manufactured. They're a powder coated plate, 20 by 30 powder coated plate with a screen printed design and a clear coat process they put over it to it actually helped hold up to graffiti. We've had graffiti very little over a few years, which is nice. But we've had a one occurrence of graffiti directly on these signs, and they've held up pretty good to actually graffiti removal product without screwing up the actual printing process that they do. But them themselves are about $130 a piece, so are pretty affordable as long as we save the digital files. Printing pretty affordable to replace if somebody was to actually ruin them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Couple questions. I'm possibly talking about funding. Do you think the local wildlife organization, have you sought funding from them to fulfill some of the fill-in money? I didn't hear that.
I'm not necessarily seeking.
I'm not sure because especially if they're going to be, we're going to be featuring the wildlife. I'm just wondering if there's some funding.
Wild Columbia County, they are completely not. I don't know if they make any money whatsoever off their blog. They do it because they are into.
Oh, not that group. No, do we have our local wild and life organization? I can't recall.
Oh, we have the Soil and Water Conservation District.
That's right.
They primarily operate off of grants. They've actually one of the structures at the Ruli Trailhead. They developed the content and got a grant to develop content for one structure. I believe the county actually provided the structure, and they're not necessarily rich with cash here and there. There's grant opportunities available. Grants, really good. I think this, in my mind, is a small enough scale financially as a project that grants often take a decent amount of time, and you have to hit certain cycles. And I'm not against pursuing grants, but knowing that there's some Travel Oregon funding available, some county assistance, and potentially a small ask from the city. My personal recommendation would be, I think this is something we could do without a grant. Grants take a certain amount of work to administer and apply for. So it's being a small project, financially speaking, that would again be up to you. But I think with a handful of local donations and even material breaks, I know Dahlgren's oftentimes has given us material at cost. So that could bring down the cost of something like this, and even some of the metal components potentially.
My other question is, you're asking to develop a new group, a new, I guess, work group. I'm just thinking, why wouldn't the group be the Parks and Rec for this?
That would be perfectly okay with me. I guess my ask be, I think it would be necessary for us as a county to be involved in that to some extent, and in my position as a liaison to your Parks Committee, that could be good enough. I do think it's important that we get museum historical society input, really hone in on local history if that's what you want to do. We found some good information or developed some good information, but that's up to you guys. The Parks Committee, I think, would be a very logical approach, but that could happen however you
Those
guys would
groups
like to
can
see
be
that happen.
invited to the meeting, right? So
that?
those groups can be, or those individuals can be invited to the meeting,
However
to
you
that
would like to
discussion. Okay.
develop that would be your guys' prerogative.
President Grayson.
This is pretty heavily administrative, so I'm just curious before we, think about directing anyone to do anything. I'm just curious if Isaac or Alex or Dave has any questions or input that maybe we should be considering when we're making this decision.
Sure. You can take, oh my gosh, you can take. Please.
Can you hear me? So a little back history from the city's perspective is this was approached to us in 2019. We were all thumbs up right from the word go shortly after acquiring Chapman Landing. In 2020, we started having some serious discussions with the county on this concept, and we were in full support then. And we actually authorized them to begin construction on installing some of these kiosks in 2020. The theory was that Turtec, we would leave it's green. It has its own theme going. We asked them not to install one of the large kiosks at that location. But down at Chapman Landing, they were authorized to do so. And at that time, there was a no cost to us. So the cost is a new item that we can truly discuss. As far as the historic waist-high kiosks, there was no limit to the amount that they were allowed to install along that. The more history we can share, the better. So we've for this, it's just, it kind of went silent. I don't know if that's a COVID thing or what caused that delay, but as far as signage goes, our rules do look different than theirs. I think that follows you, Councilor Miller. The signage on those would be different. The ones that we would share is anything informative about the trail. There's the one that has the crown and the Z on it. More than welcome, in our opinion, to have those throughout. But the park rules and things do differ from the county's rules, so therefore that signage would be ours. So, bring clarity.
Thank you.
My question then, Dave, were they okay to do the small ones at Turtec as well?
Yes, anything of the historic manner, the waist high, the entire length of the city's section, that was okay. There's no problems or concerns. We actually encourage that, especially with the Turtec and the different historical items along. And then at Chapman Landing, we were okay using the county's theory at the moment with the caveat that should the city develop that park at some day and change the vision of it and want to create our own, they would know on the forefront that we could potentially remove their kiosk and go with our own. That was the only tentative clause there.
So I think all the more reason that we should have Scappoose specifically decide exactly where these things go in. At a few years ago, I was involved with parks and had discussions, or I was the director of our parks program and had some of these discussions with Dave. My recollection wasn't put them in wherever, which awesome. But then Riley Baker is our current parks director, and I believe he's met also. So I would have concern with the county just showing up and flopping them in. And obviously we wouldn't do it that way, but I think it would be good to map this out in a much more clear way and have the city say, here's, or agree to exact locations in a holistic approach. So then we don't have to worry about a couple years later trying to decide what's okay and what's not okay. I think that would help us a lot in determining the full breadth of the project and how many exactly where, so there's not confusion later on and what exactly you guys like to see happen.
It is correct. There was going to be a proposed plan established to us to authorize, but our point was that we were okay with at any point throughout our jurisdiction, if there was a known historical marker, that it would be okay for them to do that. It didn't mean we were going to pepper it with 100 of these things. It's just that there would be a plan identified of them.
Councilor Miller.
So there's, in case you may or may not know this, there's been some changes over the last few months with I don't know if changes is the right word, but just the involvement in the scope of our Parks Committee too. So I'm wondering, if this is a good time to bring this back into a committee like the Parks Committee and have that discussion about where the kiosk should go and involve the Park Committee with that. I wasn't privy to the previous conversations of, how the locations on the city side were decided, but just given where we're at now and the conversations that have taken place with the Parks Committee over the last several months, it seems prudent that we would involve the Parks Committee. And then that would, I think, also address some of the things that you said too with the county, being able just to have a discussion in between the city or the Parks Committee. And I don't know why I'm pointing at you. Yeah, that image doesn't leave my head, sorry. But I think that's a good way to make sure that everybody that needs to be included with this is included in it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we extend the meeting past 9 o'clock.
Motion to move the meeting past 9 o'clock. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, any question? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes.
So for new council, we have a thing where we extend.
Meetings are set from 7 to 9. If they extend that, you have to make a motion.
Sorry, we had to have a learning moment.
A lot of those tonight.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor? I see you're putting your coat on. I don't know if you're leaving, but would you be willing to attend some of those meetings and provide historical input? Thank you so much.
What I'm kind of hearing and thinking in Parks and Rec, would we direct them to work with Commissioner Garrett at a meeting and Mr. Sukow, if he wants to be part of it, to talk about how many general locations?
I think the Parks Committee needs to be involved is what I was getting at. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah,
too?
that's what I'm talking
Okay.
about, having them do that. But do they have the ability to discuss budgets and how much money? And so they just need to come back to us with a recommendation of, this is how many signs of kind of what kind and about where they should be.
I
And
think city manager want to weigh in on that because I think we're getting into some steps here that
I mean, with respect to the dollar amount you're talking about, well, I wasn't aware we were gonna get a dollar amount on this request, so I would want to at least chat with Dave about the budget. But having said that, this amount I could approve without coming back to council, so just be more of a question of, do you want to see the locations of the signs that the Parks Committee had selected essentially before approving? Because in terms of the dollar amount, that would be something that could be done administratively.
we wouldn't even need to secure a recommendation from them.
I would like them to
So it's up to you.
share their recommendations to us. I do think there needs to be some involvement administratively with Dave and Alex based on the history, based on, if there is now a dollar amount required, that determines how many signs probably would go up. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask Dave to attend those meetings in the evening or if he just would. Yep, he's going to do that. So I would like the two of you involved in some aspect with the Historical Society in the Parks and Rec setting, and that the recommendation come back to us.
Sure.
I'll just say, if this came down to, we just want a couple of kiosks, and I think originally the concept was, hey, we could put a few of these things up to keep this concept going. The county could probably figure that out. We have enough material. My thoughts is this could turn into something a little more comprehensive, and that 10-15 range turns into a bit more of a budget. So that would be where the cost sharing concept would come up with, and some general idea that, hey, we're not too far out of the range of possibility here, but is enough assurance to me to let's work with you guys to figure this out. One that, not asking for a ton to make it happen. It's more involvement, I think, and buy-in.
What I'm hearing, Commissioner Garrett, is that you're here just to say, yes, we are for it. Apparently, we were back in 2020 or so forth, right? So
And we still are, and we would be willing to help with the install and all of that. That's no
Right.
problem. I'd be happy to work with the county to do some pre-planning It sounds like this would roll into the next fiscal year. If we know a ballpark number, depending on what we're thinking, we can just budget that in as a council approved project. So that is generically in the budget for next year so that funds are available for this purpose. There's strategies to accomplish this. It's just.
So are we agreeing to move forward with their partnership, right? That's what we're wanting to vote on?
I've got a question real quick, just about the process of how the content gets developed and reviewed. I really appreciate, you know, the offer to engage with Scappoose to make sure that our signs are really relevant to our habitat and our community. But if we are tying into a broader signage system across the county, it would be important to understand, I think, the review process for content. So do we have like a landmark review committee, or, you know, is every town kind of in control of what they get to feature, and are we sure that what's being featured in another town is being reviewed by the appropriate stakeholders for accuracy and relevance? And
Well, so far, we really weighed heavily on the Columbia County Parks Committee and staff and the Columbia County Museum Association kind of developed the baseline concept, and our Crown Z advisory committees. Like I said, there is a desire to maintain consistency, not down to individual rules. At the very most, or the very least, the structures to have that design consistency. And I think a desire to have, you know, the naming plates stay consistent. The color, you know, our historic signage has a border around it that has a color. We don't have requirements with that. I think we could work very reasonably with you guys if you said, hey, we want something that looks slightly different. I don't think that's a big deal. It's just the overall consistency of the trail, not be wildly different.
well, I guess I'm not concerned about our ability to control the look and the content, but more about we are buying into a broader system and making sure that all of the folks developing content are doing so in a responsible and respectful way. And so, and I think this is a wonderful effort, and I think it really is important for tourism, but I would maybe make a recommendation if there's not already something like a landmark review board, maybe thinking of developing something like that with the right stakeholders, with the native population representatives and perhaps people from like the Watershed Council and others, just to kind of review all of the content.
My recommendation would be this specific project, the Crown Z Trail Advisory Committee and the city of Scappoose come to consensus, because there's going to be, well, and I guess Travel Oregon, I'd be concerned if we get many decision makers on the overall design other than an advisory capacity on saying, you know, and you guys put together that group however you'd like to for advisory. Like to have a certain amount of faith and work together to come up with something reasonable. So without getting it too complicated, I mean, that is ultimately up to you guys how you would like that decision making to happen. For our support, and I think some of those Travel Oregon dollars, yeah, there's going to be an expectation that there's consistent look and feel.
Yes, yes. And I don't want to overcomplicate what this project specifically that we're talking about, but I guess, again, we are kind of buying into a broader system here and just making sure that there is
So there's over,
process and checks and balances to what's featured and highlighted and making sure it's properly vetted.
and I'll reemphasize, it's well over 50,
accuracy of
50
kind of
structures countywide that all very much look and feel the same. And that's a good baseline to look at. You know, that's kind of our expectations. Not to say there's isn't room for wiggle room there.
I think what I'm hearing from Counselor Holmes is more of like the content and the wording that's going on here. I have to admit, you know, it's in our Scappoose vision statement that we recognize the Chinookan people. There's a lot of white happening on these slides, and it makes me feel that we need to have some Native stakeholders in the conversation. I know the school district is closely linked with the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, and they're trying to bring in a lot of accurate history into Scappoose. And I think that that's important when we do claim ourselves to have an Indian mascot, et cetera. So I would just hope that we hold ourselves as the city of Scappoose to a standard that is accurate in those
And if we're buying in,
Historical.
yes, thank you for clarification. And if we're buying into a broader system, that system is also looking to respect and include that.
Absolutely, and that content is entirely up to you guys, for here for support when it comes to that. And that's, I think, my reluctance on, potentially having signs be installed was I do not want this to be up to the county to decide your content.
Counselor McHugh?
Yes, the county's done a great job with all the kiosks along the trail, and Scappoose and Vernonia are unique because we're the only, I believe we're the only other municipal bodies that you have to deal with, and the county committee has done all that overseeing that Councilor Holmes mentioned for the rest of the kiosks. And so I really agree with Councilor Gryson that we need to get a good representation of our Native American history. I think it's important that we get the Scappoose Historical Society involved, which has already been mentioned. I would also ask if we can get Cindy Eade involved. I think that would be an appropriate thing. And probably our foremost experts besides Cindy Eade and her husband Ollie is the county, well, I guess it's called the Columbia Museum Association now. It used to be called the Columbia County Historical Society, but get them involved as well. I think there's just a lot of moving parts here, and it might be a little bit kind of convoluted to start with, but I do think getting input from those organizations is really important. So that's my thought on it. So whether we use the park committee and expand it out with some of these others, or we set up a separate committee, I don't think it matters too much. But Scappoose is kind of unique in this because we're the only other municipal body besides Vernonia.
Kind of what I'm hearing then is, I mean, if the Parks and Rec gets with Commissioner Garrett and Mr. Sukow and kind of determine location, number of signs and locations and of what kind of size, then the Parks and Rec can, and then bring in the museum, the Native, the Historical Society at a different time to determine then with those signs what the messaging will be. Content creators. And you'll tell them, you know, the basic things that all signs have to have. You guys can kind of decide the look, but the actual content, the Parks and Rec can bring all those stakeholders in. And then make a recommendation to us for
For
each.
clarity on that, at the conclusion of the Parks Committee's involvement, would you ask that that comes before you for final approval? Because I will say in 2020, there was different city management and a whole obviously different council. And it was of their opinion at that time that they wanted the cities to maintain its own look versus the proposed county look. So if the Parks Committee and council agree, well, that's completely fine. Just letting you know the back history as to why things were put in the direction that they were. So I just wanted to make sure we have a clear direction forward there, that you're open to that, or you're going to wait to determine what the Parks Committee decides.
Do you guys have any of the small signs at non-trailhead, not like at historical houses or buildings? I mean, are these signs that can be throughout the rest of the city?
Well, that's the concept. We do, the city of Vernonia, along with the city of Clatskanie and Rainier, are very close to having their final designs that they're their own trail systems in a sense. The Riverfront Trail in Rainier. So it's not part of the Crown Z Trail. It's not county. And then Clatskanie has specific locations along the city that I think are a little bit more part of a walking tour around the city. So it's not just the Crown Z Trail for us. Again, I think it'd personally be great if you want to put these in other locations around the city, but that's not what I'm proposing at the moment. We'd be happy to support those efforts as well. So design consistency for my specific proposal here would be more just about the Crown Z Trail, not just the Scappoose.
We would start with Crown Z Trail, numbers of signs, and then at a later time that would be something we would look at throughout the city.
And I would add that the Crown Z Trail has been recognized nationally at the state level. We've presented several times to Travel Oregon Commission, the whole trail and the consistency of it. So have it kind of broken off does make it difficult for future if we want to start going after, helping you find funding for Chapman Landing. Having that all be consistent and one whole long linear trail between Scappoose and Vernonia.
our next presenter's on East Coast time, and I just want to be conscious of that. I don't think we need the Parks and Rec to redesign these signs. I think consistency is great, but if there's content ideas and location, we'd love to hear that from them.
Did you have anything further, Mr. McHugh, before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I just think if we have a plan to establish this committee, that's the first thing that we have to do. And personally, I think it would maybe ask the Park and Rec Committee to establish a committee, but including those people, and anybody on the Park and Rec Committee and the liaisons as well can be part of that. But there might be some people on the Park and Rec Committee that are already busy enough, they don't want to do all this as well. So I don't know. But yeah, I think we need to make a decision on how we're going to form that committee, though, before we finish up, if we can.
So do we know what we're doing going forward on this one? Are we gonna get with the Parks and Rec Committee, Commissioner Garrett, and work on number of signs? Yeah. Okay.
And as liaison, I will share all the information that we just talked about.
So is the park chair going to reach out to Casey, or how's that going to work so that we can get him at a meeting and get this rolling?
Well, Commissioner he is already one of the liaisons at those park committee meetings, so he's already going.
I forgot about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, CGI video, City Manager Alexander Rains and Assistant to City Manager Isaac, and Nicole Rongo.
She's online, correct? Okay. So I'll let Nicole walk you through this, but essentially we have some, videos for the city on our website that are quite dated, and CGI is a company that can come in and help us create new videos at no cost to the city. We wanted to present this to you now so that they could have the option of perhaps creating us new videos in the spring. And so, Nicole, can you hear us okay?
Just a reminder, you'll need to dial *6 to unmute.
One.
She's the caller, 585-703-7777.
Oh, okay. She's
Yes, you can go.
Hi,
Can you hear us?
everyone. Can you hear me now?
yes.
Okay, yeah. So, hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, and I'll keep this brief, but did want to just brief you on the program. I know Alexandria introduced a little bit about what it is we're doing, and yes, we produced some videos for you several years back, and there is an opportunity to update that content and choose some new topics that may be relevant to the community today that weren't back then, or if you want to keep the same topics, you can do so, and we'll update the scripts. That's completely up to you. I had Isaac, I think, pull up the city of Cottage Grove just as an example if you wanted to see something that's one of our newer examples. We're proposing doing 4 videos for the community where you choose the chapters. We write the scripts, we like to say, with and for you. Everything is emailed back and forth for approval. We'll work with our point person who's designated to work with us during the production process. And once the scripts are written and approved, we come out and do the filming and spend typically 2 or 3 days doing that. And then we do the editing, background music, voiceovers. And only when we get your stamp of approval, we'll send you an updated link that you can then copy and paste not only onto your website, but any website that aids in the promotion of the community as well. So if there's a cable access channel, a Main Street Association, any other entity that helps to promote your city, they too can have that link to have that video play. And I didn't know if you wanted to go over anything specific in regards to the program or timelines, or it's typically about a 12 to 14 week production cycle between sign on and completion when the videos are ready to be posted on your website.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry, Nicole, I don't know if it was a discussion that we had since the first video came out, and then we had kind of heard that you guys were going to be coming back. What is your recommendation on using electeds in the video? Because those have some turnover. Do you find it fitting that, you know, there are employees and electeds that are named and their faces are on there, because then the video has to kind of, you know, it goes outdated? Or do you recommend that there's just more voiceover and just with content in the background?
So yeah, that's a great question, because we do work with thousands of communities from coast to coast. And if elected officials want to appear in the video, you can do so. Our programs are typically set up as a 3-year program. And then at the end of that time, we come out and capture new footage and completely overhaul the content. So definitely your videos are due for that upgrade. But if someone is in one of the video topics that is an elected official and they're no longer with the community, or you know, sometimes people retire, they come in and out, we would just ask that you give us a quick call. And it's a quick, easy edit. And it's typically done within a 24-hour time frame. And then we could arrange for that new elected official, if they choose, to be featured in the video as well. So you would just let us know and we'll update that content if something does become outdated like that. And some communities, to further address that, do opt to just do a general overview and not have anyone appear in the video. And that's up to the individual community. If that's something you would like to do, we can certainly just do more of a broader scope, voiceovers, not have a certain spokesperson appear, if that's what you wish.
Any questions?
Sorry, why is it free? Why is it free? How does it come? Yeah.
Oh, Nicole, will you
why is
explain
it
why
free?
it's free?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know if you pulled up that example of Cottage Grove, but our programs are free for everyone we invite on board. And our business model is such that it provides an opportunity to showcase and promote both private and public entities of the communities. So your local businesses within the city have an opportunity to also participate and get exposure through sponsorships. And if they want to partake, fantastic. We do the outreach to the community. There's different ways the businesses can partake. Video content, different 30-second videos, 60, 90. It really is up to them. And then one of the things we do is the program is free for you regardless of how many or if any businesses partake. So there's no minimum requirement. There's no quota or threshold or anything like that we need to accommodate. So if the businesses partake, fantastic. If not, you've still got the video to help tell your story and better promote the community.
And I have another follow-up question. Does that sponsorship go to CGI, or does it go to the city?
The sponsorship goes to CGI, and that is our revenue stream and how we offset the cost of the initiative.
Okay, thank you.
Do any of those sponsors there, can you click on and go to their, does it take you to websites?
So, yep, it can either go to a website, it can play an actual video. So if you click on one that has the little play button, it'll play a video for that particular business. And then that video also goes on their official website. They can utilize that on their social media outlets as well.
I think this came up when we talked. I mean, what control does the city have over who you are advertising with? Not that it's.
Yeah, great question. The city can be as hands-on or as hands-off as they'd like to be. We do have some communities that say, look, these are our largest employers. These are pillars of the community. Can you give them first right of refusal? Absolutely. We don't require that of you, but that opportunity is indeed there. Typically, when we do the outreach, we pride ourselves on being small business, Main Street advocates. Those tend to be our biggest participants, those very community-minded businesses. Not to say that we don't have something for a large hospital or corporation, because of course we do, but it's typically those very community-minded businesses that partake. And then the city, if you wanted to recommend some businesses, great. If not, that's okay too. But we do have a sponsorship policy that we adhere to. You're not going to see political ads, pawn shops, things of that nature as a participant, adult themed stores, that type of thing.
Yes, Counselor Holmes.
So you say that these films have on average a shelf life of 3 years. Are we required to use it for 3 years? And I ask because we just went through our goal setting exercise, and one of those is to look at how we want to potentially build our brand over the next couple of years. So say we go through this brand building exercise and that completes before the 3-year cycle, what are we stuck doing?
Yes, we could concede to a 2-year program instead of a 3-year program. That might make a little more sense for you. And then we would just come out and update that content accordingly, because we want to make sure this represents your current brand and your current, story that you want to tell as well.
Mr. Mayor. Alex, is this something that we could get some input on from the Economic Development Committee and what they feel are assets in the community or things that should be seen? It's not something I personally need to hear. I just don't know if there's a way that they can share input to you or to CGI in order to.
So just asking them
yeah,
for like a list of assets, essentially.
just
Sure.
Economic Development Committee gives some assets or things they feel, in their opinion, should be highlighted in this video. I think that's important.
Absolutely. And that's a big, very popular topic that we do, economic development. What are the incentives? Why should a business choose your community over others that are also competing for that new business and industry? So that's a great idea to do a topic highlight video on economic development and have their input.
And did I hear correctly? We did engage with this group 3 years ago and did a video. Is that correct?
So we engaged with them before, but it was much longer than 3 years ago. Nicole, do you remember actually how old our videos are?
Geez, it's going back. I can tell you. Hang on 1 second. I know it was longer than the 3 years. And then they were still on, last I knew, they were still on your website. I think they might still be there.
They're there.
They are.
There's no time, there's no date stamp, but they're.
So
I guess my real question is, do we have any measurable benefit from that? Do we know like how many views that we've had, or is there a way to kind of measure the effect of this video?
I can look at link clicks and see how many people click, but I can't see data from that website for views. That would be something they might have, but I can see how many people click on the video link from our page. Again, because the video is outdated, it probably wasn't ran on social media or promoted otherwise. So I think
correct, yeah.
this time around, given our focus, we can probably do better data collection.
You guys, through the 3 years, then go back to the sponsors and make sure they're still in business, or look for new ones every year or two?
Yeah, so we can certainly reach out to the ones who got involved last time and see if they would like to participate again. And then I'm sure there's businesses that maybe weren't even in business the last time we did the outreach. So we'd be happy to incorporate some new businesses into that as well.
I do have. So I see that the Hikmath Lodge is in there. And so are you just targeting local Scappoose businesses or outside of Scappoose as well?
Typically, it's about showcasing your community's private and public entities. But if there is a service or a corporation or a business on the outskirts that services the area, sometimes there is a little bit of outreach there to the surrounding areas.
What is your kind of time frame right now? What are we trying to, voting to give you the okay and start the process? And how, what kind
So
of time?
Yeah, so we had, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we already had the approval to do the videos. And we put things on hold for a little bit until we could have this meeting just to discuss what potential topics and timelines. We're looking at just choosing the topics and getting the ball rolling and hopefully doing some filming in spring if that's when you would like us to come out to do this and capture the actual content.
Enough. Okay. So moving forward then, if it works with you, I mean, get with the Economic Development Committee to come up with some things and get them to her to start the process.
Yeah, we could schedule a welcome call and bring the production team in. And if you want to have other stakeholders, like people from the economic development team in on that meeting, you can do so.
Anything else? Thank you very much, Nicole.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Any other questions?
I think we're excited to work with you, so this should be good.
Well, fantastic. We're excited to help you tell your story and really showcase and promote the attributes of the community and look forward to getting started.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
You too.
Resolution 23-01, a resolution establishing background check fees for the City of Scappoose Police Department. Assistant City Manager Isaac Buttman will go over the staff report.
So earlier tonight, you put on first reading the ordinance 910, which establishes, among other things, a background check. This is not something that we've had before. One of the things staff looks at when we do new things is we look at what the cost is. And in the past, we haven't had a fee associated with business license. That was a council choice. This process for background checks could take quite a while and quite a bit of staff time. What we're asking for tonight is slightly less than cost recovery or at cost recovery in the most part. We believe that the dollar fee per background check will average out to be just at cost recovery in the long run. We're asking for a $30 fee to be established for background checks. This tracks with a couple other metrics. As I mentioned in that original staff report for Ordinance 910, we're the first state to kind of look, or city to look at a background check fee and a background associated with business licenses in this way. And so there's not really a lot of data to go off of. So we looked at close community partners, Oregon State Police for what they charge and our records fee currently, and everything kind of aligns. Oregon State Police charged $33 for a criminal history check, which is similar to what we were doing. The Scappoose Police Department currently charges $30 for police records. Our standard records requests are based off of staff time, which just kind of establishes where we came from. We just kind of look at what the fully loaded cost of employing somebody for an hour is, how many hours does it take to do the task, and then that would be the cost recovery. Columbia County does this as well, and St. Helens charges $20 for its public records requests. So all we're really asking for tonight is look at the establishment of a $30 background check fee so that when we're doing background checks for our LMTs who are going through and the applicants for the massage business license, we're getting cost recovery. On one of the public comments and for some of the verbal conversations I had with some of the LMTs, the majority of them did not have a problem with a $30 fee. Have their backgrounds looked at. They felt that it was worth the cost to legitimize their business.
Commissioner, this is a different background check than like an employee of the city.
Yep, that's correct.
They do background checks, most employees of the city, and that doesn't.
No, that's part of the employment package. There's
Would at the point of a license being applied for, Then do you go to them and say, okay, we have 3 background checks. According to your license, there's 3 partners and we need background checks on all 3 at that time?
Yeah. So they'll get an application form. We'll develop that where we talk to them through the form about who needs background checks, who these people are, and as they're listing them out, there'll be an associated fee. So when they bring that paperwork into the city or send it in, we'll be assessing the fee. We would assess the fee at that point. So if they came in, we could have them pay immediately. If they sent the form in, we would be in contact with them back to tell them that there'd be this associated background check.
Anything else? We go into a public hearing.
The public hearing, okay, can we just suggest, not yet?
This is a public hearing, so I will open up the public hearing. Is there anyone who here would like to comment on the resolution 23-1? Resolution establishing background check fees for the city of Scappoose Police Department. Okay, seeing none, I will now close the public hearing and move it forward to council to discuss. Any discussion? Anyone making a motion? Yes, Iago.
I move council adopt resolution 2301, resolution establishing background check fees for the city of Scappoose Police Department as written.
Any seconds?
Second.
By Councilor Holmes. Any discussion? All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, calendar. We have a special city council meeting, February 15th at 6 p.m. Economic Development Committee, February 16th at noon. Parks and Rec Committee meeting, February 16th at 6. City Council work session, February 21st at 6 p.m., followed by City Council meeting, February 21st at 7 p.m. The Planning Commission, February 23rd at 7 p.m. Staff reports, information.
I don't have any report tonight. Thank you.
See here, so we interviewed 2 new potential officers. Hopefully we'll be making offers this week. So slowly but surely getting up our ranks. We did post a sergeant's position. So hopefully we'll be filling that in the near future. I am currently in FTEP training with the sheriff's office. And we completed our CPR and first aid training was completed last week. And the lieutenant and I will be scheduling, hopefully at the end of this month or the beginning of March, coffee with a cop across the street. I spoke with them this morning.
Thank you. Councilor Holmes.
I guess, yep, final remarks. I guess I'll just briefly mention that I really enjoyed the opportunity to meet with other small cities last week as part of the League of Oregon Cities, and Councilor Santiago joined me. And it was a great opportunity to hear from other small cities that are dealing with, I think, some very similar issues that we are, namely inflation that they're dealing with around infrastructure projects and planning to potentially the need to address some of the houseless issues coming up and their coordination with the city. So I just want to say the League of Oregon Cities has been a wonderful resource. I am so glad that our city participates with them. I know that all of the new counselors up here have taken advantage of their resources at some point or another. So I guess just, I want to make folks aware that we have this resource. It's great. I think, this is a learning opportunity and moment for all of us. And I welcome, as residents, we can learn from you guys as well. So feel free to reach out to us new counselors in particular, share thoughts and ideas.
I'll keep this short given the time. I did send out the water quality report that Columbia County Board of Commissioners was looking at. And several of you replied, but of course we can do the reply all thing for the public meeting aspect. I just want to make sure there wasn't any questions about that information that I sent out. Okay. All right. It was really informative. They walked through it pretty well. Thanks.
I guess I do have a question. So do we have, so I guess one of the general findings was that E. coli is on the rise generally across the watershed, and that restricts our recreational use of the waterways. So do our Public Works Department have a relationship with the Columbia County Lower Estuary? Is that the name of the group or?
We work with all the organizations, yeah, Scappoose Bay Watershed, Lower Columbia, and Columbia Soil and Water. So we get all that information. We've been aware of that. That's why we discourage swimming in our parks along the creek frontages, because we're aware of those E. coli levels. However, South Scappoose Creek actually is getting better. They go down, and that's part of why our partnerships encourage the vegetation and the trees to lower those water temperatures to help prevent those bacteria. So, yes, we are aware.
Thanks.
President Price.
I wanted to thank Chief Lugal and Lieutenant Fluellen for being present at our schools during drop-off pickup times, just interacting with the community, them seeing you out there helps people know that you're helpers and you're willing to you know, you're open to discussions, you're here for safety, you're not always showing up in bad situations. So I appreciate you monitoring that. One thing that recently came up was I think this is just like a call to our community. My kids and I went to Dairy Queen on early release Wednesday, and we were shocked to count 49 middle schoolers were in the Dairy Queen after school. It was quite chaotic and loud. After having a discussion with the manager, I'm just trying to figure out, you know, this is something that happens quite often. They're there for hours. And what we can do in our community to provide recreational spaces for our youth. I know the teen room at the libraries had to close down, so how we can be creative and kind of all rise to help this this age group. But I know that the chief and lieutenant are super excited to now have ice cream on Wednesdays at Dairy Queen and mingle with these large crowds of middle schoolers. So I think it's just great that, you know, you'll have a presence, you'll hang out. Thank you. Today I did attend a Columbia County Community Leaders meeting, developing strategies and solutions to support childcare. Case in point, not a lot of childcare, not a lot of places for kids to go. I learned something amazing, like 911. There's a phone number called 211, and it's a helpline to find childcare in your area. So if you dial 211, they will tell you what childcare providers in your area have openings. I would love for them to hook up with us. Maybe in our newsletter or online. Another resource is called Find Childcare Oregon. Basically, the Columbia Economic Team is really interested in partnering with them because, of course, business owners or people that work here, we want them to live and work in Columbia County, and childcare not being accessible is a major issue in keeping employees, but that they need another business model. They were talking about pulling in local businesses to be investors in daycare facilities so that people paying for daycare aren't having to pay a ton, so that daycare providers can actually earn a decent living, that those businesses would be contributing money into this kind of pot essentially that would help sort of both sides of the game. So a really weird way to look at childcare, but it was fascinating. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Councilor LaFrance.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank fellow counselors and city staff for helping me and other new counselors get up to speed. It's been a fast 4 or 5 weeks. You know, our journey has started. I feel like we've been very productive, and I'm excited to continue this productivity throughout the rest of 2023.
Councilor Santiago.
In January of this month, oh gosh, January 19th, from February already, we had a Parks and Recs meeting, and they were given a plan update. They're in the second phases of 5, so that's great. So that plan is moving along. So if anybody wants to see it, I have a copy, but it's a great plan. So a couple things that I do want to share that are going on in the community. On March 9th and at 10 a.m. to 11, PCC OMIC is having a training partner event. And if you're interested in that, I'm more than happy to share. But they're wanting to just, they say they'd like to share their partners in the new training center. I believe there's probably some information on their website. On April 27th, there's going to be a job career fair with the partnership of the Northwest Regional EDC and PCC OMIC training. And so that's, for me, that's great to hear. And of course, they have one at the May 12th at 12 to 6. It's called Fab Lab Grand Opening. So you say join PCC OMIC Training Center Fab Lab, their grand opening. So they're building a whole new facility there. So it'd be great to maybe go and check it out. I'm sure they have details on their website. And this Sunday is Super Bowl. Please drink responsibly. Drive safely.
Counselor McHugh.
No comment.
Thank you. Quickly, I wanted to thank staff. Had a great Saturday and counselors working with all you all day long. Appreciate it. Chief Lugan and I got to show off our amazing artistry, our drawing capabilities. You'll never see that again, I hope. Thank you guys for all your help. Like Andrew said, this first 5 weeks, it's been a lot, and it's been very helpful having you guys all there to help. My hand. Historical Society, I've got to clean up on last Sunday. A couple of us alumni from the early, they were from the 70s and 80s. We got to help Miss Williams. I wanted to thank her for coming to clean up and move some heavy equipment. They're getting ready to get that basement ready to have a museum. So it should be hopefully up and running late spring. It'd be nice to get all the kids in there. So we did some heavy lifting and moving some stuff out. I do echo Ms. Holmes about the LOC. They've been very helpful, and there's a lot of meet and greets, a lot of mayor get-togethers, and they've been very helpful on answering questions and reaching out, and continue to use them daily almost. And then I think it is Dornbecker Week. It's at the high school. They're doing a lot of fundraisers. I know there's a burgers and bingo Thursday night. Every day is a theme, and there's a big like basketball game at the high school tomorrow, Astoria. Chance for the boys to get second in league, and the girls who have not beat Astoria in a long time. They're one of the top teams in the state, Astoria. And they'll have a big day there with a lot of fundraising, and I'm sure a lot of vendors out in the hallway raising money for Dornbecker. They do a really good job. That's all I have for tonight.